Evening, great group tonight. Glad to see everybody here. This is a really important topic, and unfortunately, most of the time parents are too busy with the urgent things of life that they don't have the time to invest in themselves and their family. But these are things that all of us really need to know, and if you want to live a healthy life, is essential. So today we're going to go through everything you need to know as parents to be healthy yourselves and to help your kids be healthy and thrive. So the reason why this is so important is the bad news that we live in a relatively sick country. When we look at a lot of the statistics and we look at who spends the most money on healthcare of all the nations in the world, who do you think that is? It's America, right? It's a tune of $2 trillion. That's over twice as much as the next closest. So you would think if we spend so much money on this and that was the answer to being healthy, then our health outcomes would be really good. So they actually rank the top 40 countries when it comes to health in the US every year. And out of 40, where do you think we sit?
42.
Pretty close. It's 38, right there towards the bottom. Pretty crazy, right? And we take 75% of the prescription drugs in the entire world, the whole world, billions and billions of people, but we're only 5% of the population. So if money and drugs and access to medical care and insurance and all these things was a solution to being healthy, we wouldn't be sitting last down there. And how do you think this affects our kids? They're actually worse. 25% of kids now are taking a medication for a chronic health concern. Every year, the issues go up and up and up. In fact, it's the fastest growing of sick populations in America is our children. So if we keep doing what we've been doing, can we expect a different result? No, we're just going to get a lot more of the same. But there's a better way. That's the good news. And the good news is based upon truth. It's just things that most people don't know and even fewer really understand. And that's what we're going to go through today. So the 5 essentials of max living. We put together 5 key essentials of living a healthy life naturally. If you understand, implement, and continue to use these healthy habits, you will have an amazing life. You'll be able to minimize the risks of dysfunction and disease that plague so many. You'll be able to radically revolutionize your health. You'll be able to avoid medications and get natural drug-free solutions. How's that sound? Sounds good. That's what we want. I love the excitement. So there's a few key principles that we want to understand. Number 1 is that you're designed to be healthy. That's what's normal. You're designed to be healthy. You're not designed to be sick. Right, that's not the plan for your life. Genetics plays a very small role in what you experience as health, just 5%. That's it, 5%. The rest is what you do every day, your lifestyle and the stresses that you're under. Thoughts, traumas, toxins, emotional, physical, chemical stresses. They're around us all the time. And if you don't understand where they are and how to change that, or how your body adapts to these things, that's where the issues show up. So genetics is just the blueprint. It's your lifestyle that determines how those genes are expressed, healthy or sick. So you have an amazing control of your health, and that's what it's all about. The rest of the good news is that your body's intelligent, it's smart, it knows what to do. It's designed to regulate normal function. It's designed to heal itself, and that's what's normal. So we want to get your body back to that natural, innate intelligence, and we want to stop interfering with that in an unnatural and unhealthy way. That's why your nervous system is so important. This is the master control system. You see this right here. Your brain, your nervous system is linked to every cell, tissue, organ, gland in your body. Every single chemical and hormone is regulated by your nervous system. Your heart and your lungs, your immune system, your digestion is all regulated right here through your nervous system. We want to make sure this system is working at its absolute best. And it's designed to function at 100% all the time. So it's constantly working behind the scenes at 100%. How much gets to your body determines how healthy you are. If there's interferences along the way from your spine and through your health, it keeps your body from expressing that health, from healing itself as it should, from functioning normally. And that's what we want to focus on. That's why your spine is so important. This is your lifeline. This is what surrounds and protects that nervous system. It's what regulates the communication from your brain to your body, and it's the source of all health and healing. So our first essential is chiropractic. And most people still think of chiropractic as neck or back pain. They see it as a doctor that cracks your back after you are in an accident or you hurt yourself at work or you have a headache. And we certainly see those things. A lot of people come in here with pain and we're able to help them overcome that naturally. But really, chiropractic is about your spine and nervous system. It's about helping your body adapt to the stresses around you to maintain that healthy function, because that's what your nervous system does. And your spine is a direct connection to your brain and nervous system. So it's the fastest way to change your physiology. And the spinal development happens from the day that you're born. And when we look at the development for children, it starts with the neck. So the cervical curve, you should have 3 curves in your spine, one in your neck, one in your mid-back, and one in your lower back. This is what holds up the weight of your body. This is what regulates the health and function of your nervous system. And it develops when you're really young. So the first 1 to 4 months is when you start to develop the cervical curve. That's why it's important for babies to have tummy time. That's why it's important for them to be able to lift their head. And if they're subluxated from the birth process or early on, this doesn't happen. And that spinal structure doesn't develop properly. Number 2 is the thoracic curve. So the thoracic curve is the mid-back curve. This happens when you start to crawl. So when you start to get up and get the strength to get on all fours and start to crawl, that mid-back starts to develop. And the process of crawling, left and right, actually starts to develop the balance and coordination of your brain. This is the coordination that we need to stand up and walk upright. And usually in the first year of life, that's when the low back, the lumbar curve here, that's when that starts to form as you learn to stand and walk and become upright. And that's the normal process. So we want children to go through this normal process. Sometimes kids are unable to lift their head and that causes problems, or maybe they crawl late or start walking early and they skip steps. That's not normal. You want to make sure every child goes through this normal progression, because if you skip steps, it affects the development of your spinal structure and it affects the development of your brain and nervous system. Now, we live in a modern life that is stressful, many times unnaturally stressful, and it's constantly being bombarded on us. So these stresses cause interference to your nervous system, and that's the real cause of health issues. That's the root of where these problems come from. And to be healthy, you must address cause rather than treat or manage symptoms. So when we look at one of the biggest stresses for children, it's actually the birth process. They've done a lot of work and studies on this. They found that birth trauma can happen even in a natural, seemingly healthy delivery. And what they found as they looked through this is that it can cause spinal cord and brainstem injuries that are many times overlooked and undiagnosed. Medical doctors aren't trained to look at this. Pediatricians aren't trained to do this. Obstetricians aren't working on this unless it's severe. The baby has to have torticollis or a completely misshapen skull or a loss of function of an arm due to a brachial plexus injury for them to even say anything about it. But most of the small injuries happen unknowingly. This is what's called vertebral subluxation. This is what we focus on as chiropractors. When your spine shifts out of its normal alignment, that creates a neurological effect. Now, you may not notice the symptoms right away because you only feel 10% of what goes on. That's it, just 10%. And babies can't tell you what they feel. All they have is their ability to cry, and they cry for all kinds of reasons, right? They cry because they're hungry, they cry because they're tired, they cry because they have a dirty diaper, they cry just to cry, right? There's all kinds of reasons, so they're not going to be able to say, hey mom, my neck hurts here, or hey dad, my low back is bothering me, and they're not even going to feel those things. But it shows up as other problems later on in life, sometimes even early on. And you have to be specially trained to understand how to look for these things to be able to actually help correct the issue. So that's why we have advanced training. All the chiropractors here, my wife, Dr. Catherine, she is the most advanced and the most trained of all of us to really find these early subluxations and childhood development so that these children can start their life off at 100% of their health potential. And it doesn't create these recurring health problems. So they looked at this and they studied over 1,000 different infants where they actually checked for subluxation, specifically in the upper part of the spine, because that's where it happens the most. Just think about the birth process and how that goes. Most of the time, you're coming down head first, and that head is pushing and pushing and pushing. And sometimes it's pulled or twisted, and this can really shift things out of alignment in the spine. Think of how gentle you are with a baby. And if you've ever seen a delivery of a baby, how rough and just strenuous that can be, that would hurt you and I, much less a newborn baby, twisting and pulling and pushing on this little neck and this little head. Of course it can shift things out of alignment. That just makes sense. 80% that were checked in the first month of life were found to have subluxation in the upper part of their spine. And how many of those kids do you think were referred to the chiropractor? Very, very little. Maybe 1% at best, probably even less than that. So these people, they need your help. They're not going to know unless you tell them. That's why we're so big on education, is because we want people to know these things. 1,250 infants checked within the first 5 days of their life, 90% had suffered enough birth trauma to cause subluxation. 90%. 10% suffering severe trauma. And this is what's usually detected. That's when they really notice, oh, my baby's head is stuck like this, or can't use their arm, or is significantly bruised and has other things going on. This is birth trauma. Now, sometimes these things go away on their own. Many times they don't. But unless you know how to check it and take care of it, you don't know. So your body's smart. We talked about that. That was one of the important things to understand. And in babies, some of the warning signs you'll notice for subluxation is that it's harder for them to breastfeed, typically on one side more than the other, because they can't always turn or move their head all the way. Or they have spinal cord tension in their upper part of their neck, which affects the muscles of their jaw, which affects their skull, which affects their ability to suck and move, and it creates problems. Sometimes they'll favor one side more than the other. Maybe you've seen pictures of babies and their head's kind of always a little bit off to the right, or the head's slightly misshapen. These are all indications of subluxation that has happened during that birth process. Many times they'll have excess gas, they'll have spitting up because they're not getting full latches and they're not getting the proper digestion, so it's creating issues in the baby. Sometimes they have sleep issues, or they have more stress, or they get recurring ear infections because that all drains from this upper part of the neck. The C1 and C2 goes right to all the glands, mucous membranes, your inner ear. And that's so essential for this to drain. And if that's not happening, well, it's more likely for you to get an infection. That's ear infections. So we think about all these things. These are actually relatively common. If you asked a lot of parents in the first few months of life, you're going to see a lot of these things. Now, if you went to your medical doctor with any of these things, what's the solution? Sometimes it's medications. Not always, but yes, they will give these kids medications early on in life that were never ever studied or designed to be given to children.
Or they say it's normal.
It's normal, right? Obviously we know that although common, it's not normal, because normal is healthy. These things are abnormal, therefore unhealthy. And there's, again, a cause. It's not a cause that a medication is going to fix. Many times they'll tell moms, maybe your breastfeeding is just not for you, so let's move to formula. You guys ever look at the ingredients of most formulas? Horribly toxic. Not good for you at all. Now it's creating new and different types of problems. Breastfeeding is also really healthy for moms. Extremely healthy for you because it's part of what helps balance out your hormones. It's what helps with the postpartum process. It's what helps with losing the weight. It's what helps with the reformation of your body. So when you skip that step, not only is it taking away from the baby, it's taking away from mom too. And it's huge for immunity. Natural immunity comes from the breastfeeding process. Your body's so intelligent that when the baby gets exposed to something, it actually changes the breast milk to create certain types of antigens to help the baby work through that. So it's still one of the healthiest things that you should do, typically within at least the first 1 to 2 years of life, for both mom and for baby. And these are all things that would limit or interfere with that we see babies and kids coming in for all the time, and we're able to help them work through. But you wouldn't know that if you just went to your doctor or took the normal medical approach. That's why it's so important to look for something different. So you want to start chiropractic care young. You've probably seen a lot of babies come in and get adjusted. Many of you may have brought your babies or children in when they came in, and this is what it looks like, very gentle. The kids like getting adjusted. You may hear them cry, but babies, again, they cry for all kinds of stuff. So it's not hurting them at all. The amount of pressure we use for babies and children is just enough to maybe depress your skin. That's about it. Very gentle, very, very safe. That's another thing that most people don't understand is they think it's unsafe or unhealthy. Sometimes doctors will even recommend their patients, don't take your baby to a chiropractor. That's dangerous. But the truth of the matter is it's very, very safe and it's very effective. But not all chiropractors are specifically trained to deal with kids and babies. In fact, we had one class in chiropractic school for pediatrics and obstetrics. That was it. Of the hundreds of classes that we took, one was for babies and obstetrics. But it's so important. And this is one of the reasons why kids are struggling, is because they start off life subluxated, already less than, and then we add on all the other stresses and interference we're going to talk about here today. So this is one of the best ways to set your kids up for success, is get them chiropractic care young, so we can help their bodies function at their optimum and deal with the stresses of life that's coming up. So that's what we're going to talk about now. This is when you really want to pay attention, and we got some great resources in your packet. Did everybody get a packet here? The first page here, I'll make sure you grab one at the front desk. This has got a lot of great resources you're going to want. The first page talks about a parent's guide to chiropractic for children and things that you want to know. So make sure you're going and reading through this, and we're going to discuss all these things today. All the things that would cause many of the health concerns we see with children that's related to their spine and nervous system. And we're going to talk about posture. We're going to talk about healthy habits. We're going to talk about nutrition, all the things that go into that today. So really, when it comes to a natural development of children, it starts even before you want to have kids. So many times people think it starts during pregnancy or after the baby is born, but it actually starts prior to that, based upon the health of both parents, not just mom and dad, because you're taking genetics and information and life from both parents that come together and create this new little baby. And so the health of both parents matters. If there's old toxicity problems, if there's nutrient deficiencies, if there's nervous system problems, underlying health conditions, that actually affects the health of this little fetus going into it, because you're getting not the best version of what's going on. And that's what can lead to many times difficulty getting pregnant. It can lead to miscarriages. It can lead to neurodevelopmental disorders before that baby even completely develops. So if you're planning on having kids, or you know people that are, you want to start that process of getting healthy prior to. So both parents should be receiving chiropractic care. Both should go through a process of detoxing. Make sure your nutrient levels are where they want to be, because all of that goes into developing a healthy fetus and a healthy child. And then, of course, taking care of yourself through pregnancy, avoiding medications, avoiding excessive stresses, avoiding vaccines and other forms of toxicity, eating healthier foods, many things we'll talk about here today. But that's all part of this preconception and pregnancy process that helps start that little child off on the right foot. You want to set them up for success. Again, what is the medical approach during pregnancy? It's flu shot. It's get your shingles shot. It's take Tylenol when you're not feeling well. It's get your ultrasounds. All these things are stressful and toxic to the baby. An ultrasound is like laying down next to a train track as the train drives by, and it's totally unnecessary, other than maybe one to make sure everything's in good state. You don't need to get a picture every couple of weeks to see what's going on. Extremely traumatic to this small little baby that doesn't know what's going on. Every toxic stress goes right into that baby's bloodstream. Anything injected in you goes into the baby's bloodstream, and their little bodies, their little brains, they're not developed to deal with that kind of toxicity. So it causes issues, it causes problems, even during pregnancy. So the health of mom during pregnancy, her stress levels, her lifestyle determines how that small child is developing. And then we look at the birth process itself, which can be many times, as we just showed, very stressful. And that's in a good environment. When we start talking about adding in interventions, we start talking about C-sections, and we start talking about forceps and vacuum delivery and forced delivery and all these other things, we're adding on that trauma that's happening to this small little child. And then as we're going through the normal process, from the very first day babies are born, they're recommended to be given multiple vaccines. Many times they're given medications, antibiotics right away, even that first day, without any real signs of real disease happening, but just maybe the thought of or the potential for, already weakening the digestive system, already weakening the brain and nervous system, already weakening the immune system as they're just starting off in life. And then we talk about other things that are connected to that in their developmental process. All these things are preparing this small child for what's to come in life. Really, the first 3 years is the most important for childhood development. This is when their little bodies are preparing for life in the real world. And so if we think about the unnatural development process, which pretty much all Americans go through from the preconception, the pregnancy, the birth, our C-section rates in some areas are as high as 30%. 3 out of 10 babies are born from a C-section. There's many things that happen naturally as the baby goes through the birth canal that don't happen when you get a C-section, right? That affects the start of their life. That basically kickstarts every system in their body, including their digestive system, because of the exposure they have to certain types of bacteria. That doesn't happen when you have a C-section. So those children typically, if you don't do interventions in the first couple years of their life, struggle and have health problems later on. They're more likely to have asthma, neurodevelopmental problems. They're more likely to have weaker immune systems. They're more likely to be prone to injuries and other health issues because the process that needs to happen for healthy function is missed. Now, if you're also fed formula instead of breastfeeding, now we're missing a lot of the nutrients that we need, and many times formula has toxicity that goes into it as well. And then we look at over sanitizing everything, especially new parents. They don't know. It's like wash your hands every time you see the baby, antibacterial wipes, disinfectant this. That's actually bad because you need to be exposed to certain types of bacteria to develop your gut microbiome. You need these things to be healthy. If you antibacterial everything, you're actually weakening that small child's little immune system. Part of being healthy as an adult is getting sick when you're a kid. Not excessively sick, but getting sick sometimes. We're meant to be exposed to certain childhood diseases. We're meant to be exposed to certain types of bacteria and viruses, and your body builds up a natural immunity, and this lasts the rest of your life. When you start getting these artificially or not at all, it creates problems. And that's why we have so many sick kids. Right now, they're giving hundreds of vaccines to these little tiny children that are preventing them from getting certain types of diseases, but also weakening their immune system. So early antibiotics, medications, and vaccines is a huge, huge stress and interference to small children. Your blood-brain barrier, which protects your nervous system from toxicity, doesn't even develop till you're 8 years old. So if you're taking these things in, it's going to the brain. That's why we see increases in autism, neurodevelopmental problems, digestive issues, all kinds of things in small children, because we're putting toxins in their body that their body's not designed or able to deal with. And then they're already subluxated, so they're behind the 8 ball on that as well. And then they're living an unhealthy lifestyle, which is the perfect storm. So when you have an ill-equipped body and you add stress and toxicity with a not great lifestyle and environment, that's what really creates and causes these significant issues. So you really want to pay attention to this time when kids can't give you a lot of feedback. So if you didn't know to do these things and they had issues, you were told maybe, hey, that's just normal, they're going to grow out of it. But what happens when they don't grow out of it? What happens when it develops into dysfunctional problems later on in their life? So here's some key factors you can work on as they're getting older. So now as kids grow and they're going to school and they're in kindergarten and they're in elementary school, here's the things that affect their immune system the most. That's one of the biggest concerns with most parents is, I don't want my kids to get sick. I don't want them to expose these things. Now, everyone's a little bit more sensitive since COVID. So every time everybody's sick, it's like, oh my gosh, let's avoid them. Let's do everything possible to get away from it. Where before you were sick, you went to school. When I was a kid, I would go to school. If you're like deathly sick, obviously you stay home. But if you had a cold or a cough or a runny nose, you went anyway. It's like, hey, are you dying? Nope. Going to school. That's just what's normal. And that's what you did, right? But now everyone's so sensitive. It's like even a small sniffle, it's like, oh, you got to stay home. And you're quarantined for the whole week, right? That's not normal. And that's not healthy for these kids either. They need exposure. They need interaction with people. So we look at it, a big part of it is dietary. If you're eating kid food, you're probably going to be nutrient deficient and toxic, right? Think about Lunchables, think fruit roll-ups, think about all the kids' foods, right? It's all the nasty food. It's all the processed food. It's all the unhealthy stuff. Yoplait yogurt, it's got 23 ingredients, all the food dyes, all the sugar, all the artificial flavors. All these things are horribly toxic for these kids, nutrient deficient, and cause all kinds of problems. Most kids don't sleep enough and they stress too much. A lot of pressure on kids. I was just watching a documentary and they talked about Japan and how their kids typically are more advanced, but they don't even take a test until they're like 9 or 10 years old. The first few years of their life is all just about learning how to be a good person.
Japan also doesn't do any vaccinations till after 2.
Smart,
Yeah, they
right?
don't do anything till after 2.
And what do you think the rates of early childhood disease are? It's really low.
So low. They're
So
top.
low.
They are top. They're top.
They're right towards the top. And they spend way less money, and they have a lot less medications and a lot less medical interventions because they do things differently in their day-to-day life. And that's the key. They're not radically different than us genetically. They're still humans just like we are. It's not like we just happen to live in the wrong part of the world and it's bad luck. It's that our lifestyle is totally different. And so that's why we send our kids to a different type of school. Or many people have chosen to homeschool or do things differently because that pressure when you're really young is not good for you. Stress early on takes kids out of their normal parasympathetic healthy life and more into a sympathetic fight or flight state, which is not good for kids. Their little brain, again, is not meant to handle that. Your limbic system, which regulates that, doesn't even develop until your late teens, even early 20s. So you really shouldn't have a ton of stress and pressure at least until that time because your brain is not equipped to deal with it. But now we got little pressure for a preschooler to get into the right school and to already be able to read and be like the next prodigy. And it's crazy, right? What's going on? Then we look at posture all the time on the screens and the computers and the tablets and everything else that goes into that. The heavy backpacks, we're going to talk about that. The lack of outside exposure because kids want to stay inside playing video games all day, watching Netflix and TV all day. That's their interactions with people now. It's online, it's behind a screen, it's artificial. When we're meant to go outside and play and get vitamin D from the sun and activity and movement. And that creates all neurological subluxation, which makes everything worse. So these are the things that we're up against as parents, as grandparents, as uncles and aunts, as friends. And this is what our children are having to deal with in the world that they're growing up in. So if we want to change the future direction of our families, we have to understand how to start implementing these healthy lifestyle changes. And that's why we're here to teach you that. So nutrition is a big part of that. Your health is highly determined by the things that you eat. So what we want to focus on is whole foods, organic, nutrient-dense foods. This is how we're designed to eat. We're designed to eat food from the earth. We're designed to eat naturally grown, naturally raised types of foods. That's how our bodies work best. We weren't designed to eat chemical-laden foods, genetically modified foods, foods that are sprayed with herbicides and pesticides and every other toxin known to man. That's not normal. So if you look at the food they serve at school, how healthy is that? When I was at school, we had Pizza Hut, we had Taco Bell, we had all kinds of stuff there. We had sodas and vending machines all throughout the school. We can go buy that stuff all day. The cafeteria food wasn't much better. You know, the government food and the leftover old milk and who knows what going on in there. And that's what our kids are eating. And that's what they want to eat. And that's what gets advertised to them to eat. That's what their little friends are eating, right? So they almost feel this pressure of like, I want to do what everybody else does. If we don't train them and teach them why that's not the best way, they may do one thing at home and then they go to school and they do something different, right? Or we think of as deprived and then they go to the birthday party and they have 12 pieces of cake and then they're sick the next day or the next week, right? That's not the way either. So we want to help educate them and involve them in the process of what it means to be healthy. And that starts in the morning. So making breakfast a priority for your kids. When I was a kid, I used to eat Fruit Loops in the morning and Lucky Charms, and I would put a spoonful of sugar in there, and it was horrible. And I was sick a lot when I was a kid, and I wasn't very healthy, and I had a lot of health problems. I got ear infections all the time, all kinds of stuff, because my parents didn't know, I didn't know. That's just the way that it was. But kids really need in the morning, they need protein, they need healthy fats, they need hydration. They don't need a bowl of Lucky Charms. There's no nutrient density in there, right? It may say fortified with vitamin D on the box, but that's not the vitamin D that they need. They need nutrients, they need health, so we want to have a good breakfast. You want to have healthier options and involve them in that process of putting their lunch together. You want to have them pack a lunch and bring it with them and not rely on what's at school because we know that's no good. There's nothing good there. There are no good options there. So you want to train them and involve them in the process of let's get your lunch together and what do we want to improve in there? We want to have this, we want to have some fruits and we want to have maybe some vegetables and some proteins and some healthy fats. And understand what are the good snacks and what are not. Eat at home as often as you can. I know that's not a thing anymore either. People eat out so much and they eat prepared dinners. I know it takes time and we're busy and there's the cleanup and all that. I get it. It's tough for us sometimes too. It's important to eat at home and be in the process of that, because then you can control what you're eating and how you're eating it and times of day. Really avoid sodas. Sodas is one of the worst, and all the energy drinks and Gatorades and all the colored drinks and Capri Sun and who knows what else is out there these days. All those are full of sugar, or worse, artificial sugar, and the food colorings and the dyes, and all these are neurotoxins to these small children that their body's not designed to deal with. Avoiding sugars is really huge. That's candies, and that's a lot of snacks are full of sugar. These are what mess up their little digestion, weaken their immune system, affect the function of their brain. What we really want to make sure of is they're getting a lot of nutrient density. Vitamin D is huge, and in the winter you want to supplement with vitamin D and make sure they're staying on track with that. My youngest daughter, she was having some issues where she was getting these small infections, and we couldn't figure out why it was going away. And then we're like, oh yeah, she's probably not getting enough vitamin D. So we started giving her vitamin D. Within a week, it all cleared up. Just like that, after dealing with it for like a month. And we couldn't figure out why. It's like, oh, it's winter. We never go out in the sun. It's been raining for like a month. We need to get some vitamin D. So we got her some children's vitamin D, and that just started clearing right up. So in the winter, make sure you're supplementing with vitamin D for kids. And in the summer, make sure they're getting outside, because they're going to get it naturally from the sun. Another really big one is probiotics. So probiotics is what help with your gut. And most kids, they don't love sauerkraut and the right type of yogurt and these types of things that they need to get probiotics from. So we want to make sure that we're supplementing with that. We actually have a kids probiotic gummy that's really good, that has all the strains that you need to develop that healthy gut microbiome. So that's one of the things that really helps. A multivitamin for kids is really healthy too, because they a lot of times don't get the minerals and certain kind of nutrients that they need, because not every kid loves to eat root vegetables from the ground and a really super balanced diet. And it's hard to get them to eat those things. So you got to sneak them in where you can, which is where a multivitamin or some liquid vitamins or even smoothies can really come into play and help out with that. Also, fish oils. A lot of kids also don't love eating fish 3-4 times a week, but they need these omega-3 fatty acids for proper brain and nervous system development. So we got to supplement with some of those things if they're not eating it. So it's important for kids to use supplements too, and stick to a plan. Similar to what we'd want to eat as adults is what kids should be eating. Lots of healthy fats, good quality proteins. Make sure that if they're eating grains, they're sprouted grains and ancient grains, not Wonder Bread or, like a cereal like Lucky Charms or Cheerios. A variety of fruits and vegetables in different parts of the seasons. We want to get those colorful fruits in. We want to get those colorful vegetables in a variety, because that's where the nutrient density really starts coming from. And mostly plant-based carbohydrates. We don't want to have, what do kids really love? They love breads and they love all these things. We want to try to minimize those as much as possible and get more nutrient-dense carbohydrates, because that's where the real energy is going to come from.
I have a question regarding the dairy. What's your view on raw versus the pasteurized dairy?
Raw is much better for you,
Yeah.
because it has all the nutrients that's in there. When you heat anything up, you kill a lot of the good. So most of the time when you get milk, especially if you get non-fat or low-fat milk, all you're left with is the sugar and the water. All the fat and the enzymes and the good nutrition is all gone, because it was either heated up or taken out. So raw, organic, whole-fat dairy is absolutely the best. It's not that easy to come across, but any dairy product should be like that too. So it's a lot easier to get grass-fed, raw organic cheese or other dairy type products. And if you can't do that, that's when you can use like a coconut milk or a different type of an alternative. But the source really does matter. You want to get the pasture-raised cows. You want to get the organic. You want to, get all the grass-fed. Yeah, raw goat is really good too. We did that when our kids were little, and that's what we would supplement with, because they don't tend to have as much digestive problems with goat milk, because the makeup is a little bit different. And using things like a greens is really good. It's hard to get your kids to eat a lot of vegetables, you can do greens and put that in a smoothie or put that in a drink and make it really good. You can get your whole day's nutrient density from one little scoop of these essential greens here. So that's a good way to sneak in the nutrition for yourself and for the kids without them really knowing. So we make smoothies a lot in the mornings, and we put the greens in there, and we put bone broth in there, and we put coconut milk in there. So they're getting a lot of fats, and they're getting proteins, and they're getting nutrient density. To get them to eat all those things individually will be very, very tough. Very tough. to get them to eat all the right stuff, especially first thing in the morning. So it's an easy, quick way to get these things in and have it available.
Do you have any like recipes of this?
Yeah,
It's a good recipe,
we
isn't it?
do have some good
Flavorful.
recipes
'Cause
that's in
sometimes
there.
when you do too much, it ends up just not tasting.
It's not as
Or
good.
you go too hard, and you're like, oh, never mind.
Yeah, last Wednesday we did the Shamrock Shakes for St. Patrick's Day.
Oh.
We have a few different recipes too if you want some help with that.
Yeah.
I think we ought to have some printed. And we do samples of these types of things too. We have our patient appreciation weeks and stuff like that. We like to sample things here in the office. So we'll come along and we can happily share many of those recipes because it really does make a difference. And this all helps take care of your gut by getting these things in. And that's really a key component for kids. Most kids who have problems, it's neurological issues, it's gut problems. And when those systems aren't talking well together and they're not working properly, all kinds of issues can start to come up. And this is where the real advanced problems start happening, is when the gut gets out of balance, because now things are getting in your bloodstream that aren't supposed to be there. So when we look at the gut itself, you have trillions of microbiome that's in there. This is bacteria, healthy bacteria, which is why you want to expose kids to this early on. From the birth process itself is usually their first exposure to new bacteria as they go through the birth canal, and this is a good thing. And as they're children, and that's why they put everything in their mouth and they play in the dirt, and they get exposed to other kids who've had different things. This is how their gut flora actually starts to form, and that's a good thing. This is about 80% of your immune system goes in there. So when kids, they get sick all the time and they have digestive problems and they have allergies and they start to develop neurodevelopmental problems, we look at the gut. What's going on with the gut? Is that gut healthy? Is it doing the right thing? And a healthy immune system and digestion, it's important that you have a healthy gut microbiome. So the things that you want to avoid that wreak havoc on the gut microbiome is unsprouted grains. So it's going to be your typical breads. That's because it has the gluten in it. That's because it has many times genetically modified grains that are in there, herbicides and pesticides that are sprayed on this. All kinds of gut problems come from this. Sugar causes damage to your gut, especially artificial sugars like aspartame or high fructose corn syrup, really bad for your gut. Conventional dairy, I'm glad you asked about that. That's pasteurized, homogenized. Many times those cows are given antibiotics themselves. They're given hormones. They're given vaccines. And all this goes right into the milk. And then that goes into you, or that goes into your children. Conventional meat is the same way. If you're eating conventional chicken or you're eating conventional beef, they're all given all these toxins which damage the gut. Genetically modified organisms, these are the worst because they're full of glyphosate. Glyphosate rips little holes in your gut lining, which leads to leaky gut problems and can become autoimmune disorders. So you really got to guard close this gut here, and a big part of that comes from diet.
I was going to ask about the A2 milk. Have you heard of that? What is the difference?
The difference with A2 is the enzyme that's in there. So European cows or A2 type cows are more easily digestible because the molecules are smaller. It is better. And typically people have less problems because they usually have issues digesting the casein, which is in there. The modern American dairy cow is, the most unhealthy cow. Not surprisingly. The A2 is a healthier version of that and usually easier digestibles. The thing you really want to look for is the GMOs. The genetically modified foods are the absolute worst for you. And they're made worse by certain things that are in vaccines, especially like aluminum or other types of toxic exposure, binds to these things and fast tracks it to your brain, which is why it gets linked to other neurodevelopmental problems. So these are the foods that most commonly have GMOs. Soy is the highest, which is usually what they put in formula. Most formulas are soy-based, and one of the reasons why they're so bad for you. Corn, so they put corn in a lot of things, and high fructose corn syrup has replaced most sugar. That's all genetically modified. So you know you're getting significant toxic exposure as a result of that. Cottonseed and canola oil, some fruits that we probably don't use as often, most milk, and then aspartame. Aspartame is a neurotoxin that they use in certain types of sweeteners in all your non-fat and very low-fat foods. So you really want to avoid these because they're linked long-term to many health problems: cancer, liver and kidney problems, gut and digestive issues, many serious illnesses. So you always look for this little certificate here, non-GMO verified, or the USDA organic is also non-GMO. You want to look for that for all these types of foods to make sure you're not getting that in there. And this is why supplements is important. Unfortunately, most of our food is nutrient deficient. Even if you're eating a lot of the right foods, you may not be getting enough. And that goes for kids too. And most kids don't like taking a bunch of pills. It's very difficult for them to be able to do that, or they don't like doing it. So many of these are in liquid form. BioRay is one of the ones that we really like a lot and we use here in the office. We use with our kids in our family. One of the most important ones is this one here, this tummy, because this really helps with that GI system, that gut health. It actually helps remove toxins from the gut. It helps with pre and probiotics in there. And it really helps with brain development because that's connected to the gut, helps with the immune system. So if your kids have any problems at all, you want to use this tummy. Gets rid of heavy metals, balances the gut immunity, cleanses that out. Huge. Also, this Megaspore gummy, this is a probiotic that helps rebuild that gut. So if your kids have had antibiotics within the last couple of years even, if they've taken medications or had vaccines or consistently eaten genetically modified foods or you eating regular grains, you know there's damage to the gut, and you know you've probably killed off a lot of these good gut bacteria. So get their little gummies that the kids like to eat, and they love doing it. It makes it easy. The liquid tastes pretty good. It's not like some of the adult tinctures where like, oh, these are horrible. They actually have a bit of a flavor to them, enough to where kids will use them. Our kids use these all the time. They use them every day. There's many different areas. There's ones to help you sleep. There's ones to help with your mood, focus. There's ones if you're having trouble going to the bathroom. A lot of kids are constipated. Pooper helps get that moving. The immune one is really good because it has a bunch of nutrients, medicinal mushrooms, things like this that help boost your immune system. So when kids are trying to recover quicker, you use the immunity. And then the multivitamin. This is like a chewable. You guys probably remember the Flintstone vitamins, those little chewable vitamins. These are like those, but good for you. So they have all the fat-soluble vitamins, A, D, E, K that kids need. They have all the minerals that they need that are part of an essential healthy life and cellular development. So you don't have to take all of these, but you definitely want to do a multivitamin. And depending on what's going on, certain types of the year, you may want to use immune system. You may want to work on if your kids are having trouble focusing or just kind of crazy all the time. That could be toxicity, that could be parasites, that could be other issues going on. These actually help work through that in a more natural way. So rather than treating or managing a condition, helping the body work through it on its own through chiropractic care, through lifestyle changes, through natural nutrients, herbs, things like that that are from the earth that are completely natural and normal.
So I've heard that we need to be switching our probiotics every few months or so. Is that true? Is that something
That can be true depending on the type that you take.
do we need to expose ourselves to more probiotics?
You want to have a diversity, and some of these have different ones. The Megaspore has a very wide variety, so you're getting quite a bit of different ones. And as much as possible, try to eat fermented type foods because that has different types of probiotics in it as well. And depending on what's going on with your gut, we can actually measure that. We do a gut health test called Biome Effects, where they actually look at all the different strains of probiotics and see which ones you have and which ones you don't, and your overall diversity. So that's a really way to know which ones you need. There's no way to tell typically just by how you feel or what's going on, like, oh, I need more bacillus or I need more of this, right? It's hard to really know. It is good to mix it up and not just do the same one forever. It's also good to expose yourself to different types of probiotics through your nutrition and through food as well.
I have a question for on supplements. How do you feel about colloidal silver?
Colloidal silver is really helpful. We use it for our kids a lot too. Naturally antiviral, naturally antibacterial. You can use it just under the tongue, sublingual. You could use it for external things, sometimes with skin problems. We've used it in a nebulizer, put a little bit in there when you're having a respiratory issue, and that helps recover really well. So there's a lot of great uses of that. You don't want to overuse it, but it's really hard to get to that level. Sometimes they'll scare people like, oh, you're going to turn blue or this or that. You have to use so much to do that. And most of them are like small, just parts per billion. The ones that you get at Whole Foods or Sprouts or something, it's mostly water.
This last month, and that was really great just to inhale into the
Helps a ton.
and then we set it down, so I wasn't sure your thoughts on
Yeah, no, it works really good. We use that a lot as well. It works in so many different areas. And colloidal silver, that's part of what's in the Norwex towels. And you can use that in other products as too. They make toothbrushes with colloidal silver brushes. So they're naturally antibacterial. That's a great disinfectant versus using chemicals. So there's a lot of applications in your day-to-day life for that as well. Sleep's another big one. And most kids don't get enough sleep for variable reasons. Here's a few things you want to focus on is having a good routine that's consistent. Avoiding screens at least 30 minutes prior to going to sleep. That's TV, that's going to be tablets, phones, computers, whatever that may be. Because what that does is it keeps your brain awake. It prevents the secretion of melatonin. It makes your brain think it's still daytime outside and it's not time to go to sleep yet. So if you're having trouble getting your kids to sleep at night, this is some good things that can help. Make sure the room is really dark. I know kids may like night lights. If you do get the darker shades like a red or an orange, you don't want to have blue or rainbow or those kinds of things because those mimic different light frequencies. So if you do get the ambers, get the darker colors because it's not light. And so even a lot of settings on devices now have amber or night setting to where it's calming those down. You can wear glasses that block the blue light exposure, which helps calm that down before you go to bed. And kids need more sleep than we do. They do. Small kids especially need at least like 10 to 12 hours of sleep. That's ideal. Even school-age kids need at least 8 to 10 hours of sleep. And teenagers too. But teenagers are usually the worst. They're getting like 4 hours of sleep because they're on their computer all night long or they're up late doing stuff, usually on these screens, and they're getting less sleep, which leads to all kinds of problems. Stress is another big one. We already talked about that, but it comes in many forms, right? Sometimes it comes from teachers. It comes from friends. It comes from how they're performing in sports and appearance. I should look a certain way. I should be achieving in a certain way. I should get certain level of grades. You know, some kids have a crazy schedule where they got sports and activities and this just compounds all the time. It's like every day they got something going on. And as parents, I'm sure that stresses you out too. You got 5 different sports you got to go back and forth to. They got AP classes and they got advanced classes and this and they got club that. And it's too much. It's too much. And you're in this constant stress environment. That fight or flight is not healthy. That's not when things are working well. So part of that is implementing regular activity, movement, physical literacy. And this is something that you can do for the whole family. Go on walks, do activities, exercise together, do yoga together. These things are really, really important because when you exercise, it's actually part of your elimination process from your digestion through sweating through your skin. It's really good for circulation in your body. Most kids are too sedentary. They sit all the time. They sit in school. They come home and they sit. And they do their homework and they sit. They need to get outside and play. They need to do more activities. So having a trampoline, a small trampoline around the house, having activities that you do regularly, involving them in housework and chores in the house makes a big difference. And that's part of their immune system. It increases their lymphatic flow and flushes things out of the body. It's good for their brain.
I have a question about trampolines. Are trampolines safe for the developing back, the spine, and the hips and everything that we're in?
The big ones, not really. The old school spring ones are probably the worst. They make new ones now that are a bit different. That's not supposed to impact your spine as much. They're more springy and has more give. So those are better. The little tiny like rebounder trampolines, those are fine because you're not putting a ton of impact on them. The problems with the big ones is kids mess around and they'll try to double bounce each other and stuff like that. I remember when I was a kid, I smashed my nose, I tweaked my knee because let's see how high we can get you, 20 feet up in the air, and then your knees give out and you collapse. Not the best, but kids will be rough and tough, and they're not likely to have any permanent injuries. I wouldn't say it's the best thing to do, the big old school ones, but they do make the low impact ones now that are a lot safer and a lot less stressful to your spine. So get kids out doing healthy activities, have routines, keep them moving consistently. Pay attention to posture. So a lot of what's in your packet is posture. This is super important. Posture is like a window into your spine. If your posture is out of whack, your spine's out of whack, which means your health is imbalanced. So number 1, as you go through these, sit up straight. Teach your kids to sit up straight and what that looks like. To stand with confidence. Both boys and girls have issues with this. If you're getting really tall, sometimes they'll slouch over. As girls start to develop, maybe they're a little bit embarrassed about it and they'll start to kind of hunch over. Heavy backpacks make a big difference. So we want to pay attention to those things here. Teach them balance, teach them to look up, teach them to keep moving. Pay attention to device use and backpacks especially. When those backpacks get really heavy, I've seen these things here, they're 10, 15, 20 pounds. They got a ton of books in it, so you want to clean these out regularly. Are you using all of these books? Are you using all the stuff that's in there? Make sure it's center balanced. So you want to have the weight of the backpack higher and that you're using the proper straps and a waist strap if it's available. The best is to have the pulley backpacks. I know those are uncool and kids don't like those. They really do make a big difference though, because when you have the wrong type of backpack, what it does, it tends to make you shift like this to try to hold that weight up. In fact, when someone has a flat spine, part of what we do is we put weights on their back to help encourage this mid-back. But if they're already like this and you add more weight, they're going to go more and more over. And you compound that with device use, tech neck, when you're looking down on devices. I'll see kids sometimes and they're like this. That device is in their lap and they're flexed over almost 90 degrees. Imagine what that's doing to this neck here.
I bet that's so hard for you to see, right? With your profession, you want to just go talk to them.
It happens all the time. And I've even seen it with my own kids. I got to tell them, hey, sit up straight. My older daughter was starting to get headaches and these problems. Like, we need to take an x-ray of her neck. And she was losing that curve in her neck. Like, we got to stop this and we got to start training that curve back. And within a couple more months, boom, that curve goes back. But you got to keep reminding them. And we're guilty of it too. How easy is it to get on your cell phone for however long and 20 minutes goes by, an hour goes by and you've been looking like this. Or you're on the couch like this for hours, or you fall asleep there in the chair and you wake up the next morning, you're like, oh, my neck's really stiff. I've done that before. It happens. That's why you have strategies in place to restore that function. That's why we give you home care. That's why you get adjusted on a regular basis. That's why you remind yourself, oh yeah, sit up straight, put my head up against the headrest, move my computer monitor up, look up more often, spend less time looking down. So that's all the things that's in this packet. So I encourage you to go through this healthy screen use checklist, how to use them properly, hardwire your devices versus Wi-Fi, turn those off regularly, unplug these devices, because the Wi-Fi is also affecting your nervous system and creating stress in your body. So this is a really big one. And devices also cause imbalances in the brain, especially things like video games. Video games are constantly getting little hits of dopamine in your brain, and they're very, very addictive. That's why kids will play them for 8, 10, 12 hours. They would play them all day if you let them, because there's always little wins that are happening. Oh, you got a coin, you got a token, you got to the next level. Every single one of those things is a little dopamine hit in your brain, and that's a reward system for your brain. So it's like constantly rewarding you by staying on it longer and longer and longer. And this creates neurodevelopmental problems. So you want to limit that amount of time, limit screen time, limit video game time, limit TV time, because it really does mess with their brains and creates a lot of imbalances, which can lead to depression and anxiety and all these things later on in life, even younger and younger in children, which is being treated medically. So do a posture analysis on your kids. Have them stand there. See what they look like. Are their shoulders tilted a little bit? Is their head slightly off to one side? Maybe they're turned a little bit, or one hip is a little bit higher. Look at them from the side. Are they back or forward, hunched, head forward this way? All these are indications of what's going on with the spine, therefore the nervous system. And that's key. And chiropractors are the only doctors specifically trained to deal with and detect spinal subluxation and spinal issues. Your medical doctor is not going to do that. The pediatrician doesn't do that. The physical therapist doesn't do that. You need to have that eye to look for these things to see, oh yeah, I see there's a bit of imbalance there. That needs to be checked. And you want to make sure you bring them to a chiropractor who's trained on how to deal with these things, or if it's someone else you know in a different area and they couldn't make it in the office, make sure they know to look for these things too. One of the best things you can look at for health for your children. So all these things you want to take together and think about, how do I address the health for myself, health for my family, because we all want our kids to be healthy. We all want to be healthy ourselves. We want to have the energy to do what we want to do, right? Nobody wants their kid to develop major health problems or be taking a medication or not be able to live their life as they want in those formative years. So let's take care of them. These are the 5 principles you want to make sure you take away from today. Number 1, the body is self-healing and regulating. Designed to be healthy. That's what's normal. Number 2 is that the nervous system is the master controller of all health and healing in your body. That's why you always want to take care of that nervous system, from posture to diet to stress and sleep, regular adjustments. All these things are helping improve the health of the nervous system. When there's interference to the nervous system, the body can no longer heal and regulate itself normally. That's subluxation. You have 100% health potential in your brain and innate intelligence. Is that getting expressed at 100% to your body? If there's subluxations along the way, that's not happening. That's interference. That becomes a health problem. Misalignments in the spine create interference. What we do is we detect and remove that interference with chiropractic adjustments and healthy lifestyle changes, reconnecting the brain to the body so it heals itself as designed. And it happens the fastest with kids. They turn around so quick because their bodies are rapidly developing. The older you get, the harder it is for your body to adapt because it's used to those patterns for so long, and our healing potential as you get older, it just slows down. It's part of what it is. So if you had the problem now for 40 or 50, 60 or 70 or 80 years, you're not going to turn that around in a couple of weeks. But a small child, a baby, young kids can many times turn that around pretty quickly, and then you're just maintaining that healthy function over time. So even once they're doing well, you still want to get them checked like once or twice a month to make sure they're doing good. The same reason you bring them to the dentist to get checked, the same reason you take them to their doctor to get checked, is to make sure things are working well, not just when it's at its worst or when they're sick or when they have a really bad fall, but consistently to be able to prevent that. Now, for all of you who don't currently bring your kids, there are no other people who need to bring their kids in, that maybe they have health issues or they have struggles, or you see that shift in their posture, or you know they don't really take great care of themselves. These are the most common reasons why children visit our office. Number 1 is ear infections. Very, very common for young kids. Asthma, digestive disorders, bedwetting. Bedwetting is very common for kids who have subluxation right down here in the lower sacrum. As an adult, this is fused together. As a small child, there's individual segments, and those segments can shift out of alignment that affect the nerves that go right down into your bladder. So kids that have bedwetting issues, many times it's a subluxation in their lower spine that never gets taken care of. Headaches, cramping, latching and feeding issues in babies, allergies and skin conditions, and overall wellness. This is the best. When you really understand how your body works and how chiropractic is an essential part of that, you just want to get your kids checked regularly. We check our kids at least every couple of weeks on a regular basis, more when they're having issues. And they've actually studied this too. When they took children who are getting regular adjustments, which regular would be considered at least once or twice a month, not a couple times a year or something like that, at least once or twice a month, compared to kids who aren't getting adjusted and just go to their medical doctor whenever they have issues. So they actually looked at this. 200 children under chiropractic care compared to those just doing the standard medical, going to your doctor, following the recommendations approach. The chiropractic group, fewer ear infections, fewer allergies, fewer cases of tonsillitis and asthma. The health of the children under chiropractic was demonstrably superior to those who didn't. They weren't different genetically. They weren't totally different lifestyle-wise. Their brain and nervous system was functioning differently. And that's the key. Help your body heal itself. That's what's normal. That's what's healthy. You want to support that with healthy nutrition. That's why we have these supplements available. That's why we use the greens and the BioRay and the probiotics, and all these things are there to help you, help your kids be healthy, and avoid the use of medications and other medical interventions when not necessary. Is there a time where that's necessary? Sure. But most of the time it's not and can be avoided. And the recovery can be a lot better as well if you know what to do. So that's why we're here, to help guide and empower your family to live a healthy life naturally. If your kids aren't currently under chiropractic care, first thing you want to do, get them checked. Get them scheduled to come in, do an exam, do an x-ray, find out what's going on, make sure we have a plan to take care of their nervous system. That's number 1. Number 2, start doing these lifestyle principles. Look at their posture, check their backpack, pay attention to their screen and device use. Make sure the food at home is good as much as possible. Make sure we're avoiding the worst ones like the sodas and the horribly toxic kid processed food, the Lunchables, the Doritos chips. these kinds of things that are the absolute worst. It's not about being perfect. Do as much of the good things as you can consistently over time, and you will see that things trend upwards in the right direction. And you have healthy kids, and they don't have major problems, and they don't rely on medications. And if they already have advanced conditions, this will help them be better. Even in challenged kids, we see neurodevelopmentally challenged kids. We see kids with developmental challenges. We see kids with genetic problems. And although those problems will never fully go away, they do better. Their quality of life is better. It's easier for you as a parent. And that compounds over time. And that's really what it's all about. So get and use those resources that are available. A lot of these resources are in your packet here. We even put the 20 very unhealthy foods and their healthier alternative. So things like sugary drinks that can be replaced with water or coffee or tea, or maybe like a sparkling water. White breads can be replaced with other types of healthier grains. Margarine can be replaced with organic grass-fed butter. French fries and potato chips with cauliflower or maybe sweet potato alternatives. So a lot of good alternatives for how do we start making these changes. The Kids Health Perspective talks about the 5 essentials and how you can start implementing these into your life. How do we get kids adjusted? How do we get rid of the worst foods? Create a healthy mindset, get your kids moving. All that's right in here. And all the different health resources we have here today, if you're wanting to pick any of those things up, are discounted 10 to 15%. We have those available. So any of the support for you yourself as parents to take care of your health, right? You want to put your oxygen mask on first. Can't take care of your kids, your family, if you're not taking care of your own personal health. And then all the kids' nutrients are here, there as well, and available always in the office, discounted today as your reward for showing up at least 10 to 15 minutes, 10 to 15% off what we would normally be doing. I'm glad you guys took it out of your time to be here today. I really hope this is helpful and you can start applying this to your life. And most importantly, share this with others. Our mission is to help as many people as possible live this healthy life. And people in your life are not going to know this unless you tell them. So keep sharing it with them. We're recording this. We're going to post this on our YouTube channel. Feel free to share it through there. Invite them to come to the next event here in the office or come try chiropractic for themselves. And I can tell after doing this now for over 20 years, it makes a difference. And it really does work and it will help you live your best life possible.
I have a question. Children with autism, have you guys had experience with chiropractic and helping children with autism? Has it gone?
It does help, yeah, because it helps balance out their sympathetic nervous system and it just helps them calm down a bit. And it helps with their spine too, because a lot of kids who have neurodevelopmental problems typically will tend to get scoliosis or other spinal deformities because their body gets spastic or stressed, and it really does tend to help with that. So it makes a difference. Is it going to reverse it and it goes away completely? Not likely, but it will improve. Even advanced conditions improve, which makes the outcomes better.
How like ADHD, ADHD?
Those are a little easier because that's typically a brain imbalance. That's many times neurological. They're more stuck in that sympathetic fight or flight type state. And they're always just going. The ability for the brain to calm down, turn down is just not there. That can be balanced through chiropractic care. And then lifestyle-wise, usually there's nutrient deficiencies or a lot of gut health problems. So clearing those up makes a big difference.
Like theoretically, how much do you think that ADHD and ADD is way overdiagnosed?
Probably a lot. I mean, kids just have energy, especially boys many times. And there's a certain segment of people that their brains just wire that way. In fact, some of the most successful people in the world, you'd probably say have ADD or ADHD, because that's just how their brain works. They can be hyper-focused on something and then not on other things, right? We all have those tendencies sometimes. I think more of times it's a convenience thing. They're disruptive in class. They're disruptive to the group. It's easier just to put them on a medication and calm them down, but that's not good for the kids. And that typically leads to problems later on down the line. It leads to drug addiction problems, leads to other issues because you're messing with the brain chemistry. Anytime you start messing with brain chemistry, it has side effects. All right, guys, thanks for being here. Apply these in your life. You're welcome. Share what you learned. I don't know if any of you brought your kids. Hopefully they learned some fun things as well. That was the idea for today. And like I said, I'm going to post this on our YouTube channel, so you can feel free to go back and watch this again. Many of our other health workshops are on the YouTube channel as well. In the weekly newsletter, we've been sharing stuff all this month about healthy kids and healthy families, and we do different topics every month. So keep showing up and you'll keep learning. And as you compound these healthy habits, things just keep getting better. You're welcome. Have a good rest of the evening.